So what is a perfect society? The idea of perfect society, it's gone around quite a bit, and you get a lot of people that come in and say that ideas such as global abundance, which in my mind would be a perfect society, only fall in the realm of things like communism and socialism. And you get a lot of pushback when you start talking about the idea of a perfect society. So I'm going to be debunking those misconceptions today and giving a little bit of narrative to exactly what I mean when I start talking about a perfect society, a utopian society, if you want. So the talk today is going to be fairly structured. I'll be covering some misconceptions, going through a little bit of history. I'll spend a little bit of time actually on the problems today as they are and the way that I see them, and I'll hopefully like to finish off by answering the question I asked in the beginning, which is what are the problems that we actually have, and what are some solutions? There's actually a nice picture on this slide. This is from the Venus Project. Design was by Jack Fresco. Now, the Venus Project is it's a group of people in Venus, Florida, that are actually working on the concept of a perfect society. So after this talk, I certainly invite everybody to go investigate that because that's where a great deal of my ideas actually stem from. So you'll get a small handful of misconceptions that get thrown around once you start talking about a perfect society, and that really comes from the foundations of a perfect society. So when you start talking about perfection, usually for me anyways, I think of a perfect society as a global abundance. So a perfect global society would be one which has perfect global abundance. Everybody has everything they need. Nobody is suffering. Nobody is starving. Nobody is dying of an illness that we have a cure for. And what you'll get immediately is you'll get pushback saying that that's a socialist or a communist ideology. The idea that everybody has everything must come from the fact that the government must take our earnings and allocate them fairly, so the people that work hard would have their money taken and given to the people that don't work at all. And that's a huge misconception because for me, a global abundance, a perfect society, wouldn't involve money at all. It would remove socialism and communism completely from the equation as major flaws of society to begin with. And once you start going that direction in the conversation, you'll get a second pushback about incentives. If we get rid of money, where is the incentive? Nobody's going to do anything. Now, when we look at some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest things anyone's ever done in human history, there was no monetary incentive. If you look into it, and I'll post some links below the video, monetary incentive is really around menial, mediocre jobs. The 9 to 5, doing the same thing, putting the same hole in the same screw in the same rivet. And the perfect society would be one which fosters proper human development. You would take children from birth and teach them to be a net provider to the society, a net provider to the resources of the economy. And those are really the two major misconceptions which really don't fit in any place at all when it comes to talking about a perfect society. Now, when we try to analyze exactly why we are the way we are today, why are we standoffish? Why do we have wars with each other? Why doesn't everyone just snap out of it and realize that we're all living on the same planet, and if we all just work together, we could have everything for everybody. Now, it really stems back from where economics was birthed from. And prior to Adam Smith and a small group of people who brought about the modern-day economic ideas, we were really in the medieval ages before that. Just before the Renaissance, human history was really at its worst point. Almost 1,000 years of no development, horrible time periods like the plague. Really meant that regular everyday people, they couldn't even trust the people living next to them. Somebody would come into your house, cut your head off, and steal your wife and chickens, And then you had the idea of economics spur up where we took the concept of everybody already working only for themselves to begin with, and then we just tied credits to that. So when you took a point in human history where we were all standoffish and added the concept of money, where we would all work for our own personal monetary gain, it's really easy to understand why we would have developed to a system where we have now, where we seem to want to work together, and we know that when we work together, we have more success and more abundance, but we all have to look out for our own personal interest because at the end of the day, if the guy next door to me is going bankrupt and selling his house, and I'm just on the borderline, I'm not really going to help him out. And that really stems from the birth of economics. So if you take the history of human beings and put that up against where economics or monetary economics came into play in the greater picture, it's really easy to understand that if you took a society that was standoffish and barbaric and gave them a system that everybody could use to help themselves, 200, 300 years from then, it's not just going to magically develop into a perfect society. It's going to continue to develop off those same paths. And that stems from the fact that human beings are an environmental based species. If you were naturally born to be, incredibly intelligent and fast learning just based off your genetics, and you were born into a barbaric society, you would be the quickest, smartest, fastest barbaric person there was. It doesn't mean that you would be, somebody who would take everything that you learn and better society, because you're just a product of your environment. And that's what I'm coming down to here with the problem in modern society stems from the environment that we've created. The concept of monetary economics, I think, is slowly becoming obsolete. As many things do, it was a fantastic idea, and we've certainly used it to propel the entire society of the planet from the Renaissance ages up until now. But it's certainly starting to look like it's becoming obsolete when it's better to, mine coal out of the ground rather than replace the world's electricity sources with renewable energy because of the financial gain. We start to see that it looks like monetary economics is becoming obsolete. When we have the medicine to save people, but there's no money, but the resources are physically there, the system seems obsolete. And the same can be said of anything. But I think the core problem is that the crutch of monetary economics is coming to its obsolescence. And we need to start looking at a holistic way of bringing the society as a whole to its next step. So when we start to look at everything at a whole, it's becoming apparent that monetary economics are becoming obsolete. The idea of dollars and cents appear to be reaching their maximum carrying capacity in terms of what is reasonably accomplishable for a human society. The idea of scarcity is no longer an issue. We have all the resources, we have the capability to access resources, and money is now starting to become the factor of scarcity. When we don't replace the world's resources with renewable sources because there's no money in solar where there's money in coal, it becomes apparent that the scarcity factor is money rather than the resources themselves, which was the case in our historic society. And then the second greatest challenge then is how do we let go of money in a materialistic culture? And when I say materialistic, obviously, we've got people with yachts and Boeings that shouldn't have yachts and Boeings, while other people can barely afford to put a piece of bread in their mouth in the morning. But materialism even comes to thought and concepts as well. So you can, I'm sure everyone can imagine somebody who refuses to let go of an idea because they've had the idea for so long, even though it's irrational. It doesn't make any sense. Let go of that thought. That comes to economics as well. We're just, as a culture, it's going to be very difficult for us to let go of the idea of organizing around money because we've only ever used money. So we have a false self-reference criterion where, because we've only ever used money to get to where we're going, we only ever think that that's the way that it can be done. So the solution then comes from reorienting the society from birth, teaching kids from the very beginning that the idea for their development is to think of ways that they can provide back to society. And global abundance should be the only course of action. Money should be taught as an obsolete mechanic of society that we still use because we have no other solution, but that it's completely obsolete. And I think from there we can start to develop into a proper society built around resources. Now I'm going to post some links in the description below, and I strongly recommend if you're new to this type of concept, there's a great introductory trilogy called the Zeitgeist, and there's certainly a good introduction to this type of concept for anybody who's never researched it themselves. It'll certainly put you on a sure footing for furthering your own knowledge on the idea of resource economics, which it touches on very well, and child development. So please check the description below. And thanks so much for listening to my talk. I hope that you enjoy the blog post coming up thereafter.